So before we start this week's mega episode of the Summit League podcast, episode 4, which is a big one, I wanted to take a moment for a fellow broadcaster who was going through a pretty tough week last week, just before the biggest game of the season. Tyler Merriam, voice of Jackrabbit basketball, his wife Jill, and their son Joe, who's had a history of medical issues and was going through a rough time in the week leading up to the game. Now, Joe's doing pretty well at the moment, and Tyler has shared some of these details on his social media accounts, so if you want to know more or send some love to Merriam's way, track him down on social media. But through it all, Tyler called the biggest men's game of the season between SDSU and USD last week, and he delivered a home run on the radio. So our well wishes go out to the Merriam family, Jill, Tyler, and little Joe, a big Jackrabbits fan himself.
This is the Summit League Podcast, an inside look at a league ascending in the world of college basketball, yet remaining one of its best-kept secrets. We'll showcase the league's men's and women's basketball stars on their journey to reach the summit and pursue the big dance. Now, here's your host of the Summit League Podcast, Matt Pocket.
All right, a big episode. Let's get right to it, shall we? This thing's 2 hours long today. 3 players featured on today's program. First up, Albert Owens, center for Oral Roberts. Then the league champions, Ciara Duffy of the Summit League women's regular season champion, South Dakota Coyotes, and Mike Daum, the dominator of the regular season men's champion, South Dakota State Jackrabbits. Plus, we dive deep into the tournament with Kelly Stewart and Brad Newitt of Midco Sports Network. They'll be working the tournament in some capacity or another, so you're sure to see them around the Denny Sanford Premier Center all weekend long. They'll join the podcast today to check out the tournament. If you're the type who's into the deep analysis of college basketball, we've got plenty of that coming up. All right, folks, go get the app. If you're heading to the tournament, download the Summit League app first to go get news, updates, concession info, Fan Fest, you name it, it's on the app. Player info even. For full information, find it on Google Play or on the App Store. If you can't go, like me, unfortunately this year, I'm trying to make a commitment to getting back to Sioux Falls for next season's tournament, but my local schedule isn't quite allowing it at the present. You can catch every women's and men's game televised by Midco Sports Network for the quarterfinals and semifinals. The women's championship game airs on ESPNU, the men's game on ESPN2. And the Summit League Food Fight. The Summit Food Fight has raised nearly 600,000 pounds of food for the hungry in our communities over the last 9 years. You can give online at yougivegoods.com. Search for the Summit League to support your school today as part of the 10th annual Summit Food Fight. Players of the week, Faith Iham on the women's side. She triple-doubled. Nice. 13 points with 12 rebounds and 10 helpers against Omaha for her third player of the week this season. And the dominator on the men's side is 7th this year. Double-doubled against USD in Fort Wayne as the Jackrabbits clinched the title. If you would like to hear the whole episode today, which I'd recommend, I thought it was a really good episode with 5 tremendous guests, you can digest the whole thing, or you can split it up into pieces, maybe get some leftovers for another time. You can skip around to a guest if you're choosing using the SoundCloud app. A really good show on tap for today. Every conversation was a lot of fun, and it all leads up to Saturday when the march to the summit goes light speed. Let's get going. It's episode 4 of the Summit League podcast, starting with Oral Roberts center Albert Owens. He's on the way next.
In its 4th decade, the Summit League continues its ascent through excellence in the classroom and success in the field of play. In cities big and small, at public and private universities, students across league institutions reach for the summit. From academic All-Americans to NCAA champions and nationally ranked teams, Summit League student athletes achieve the pinnacle of success. The Summit League, where tomorrow's leaders reach the summit today.
The Summit League Basketball Championships celebrate their 10th season in Sioux Falls, March 3rd through the 6th. Be part of one of the nation's premier college basketball tournaments by ordering tickets today. Visit thesummitleague.org/tickets for more details and reserve your seat to witness the march to the summit. Now, let's get back to Matt Pocket and the Summit League podcast.
Episode 4 rolls on here on the Summit League podcast. We are just days out from the start of the Summit League tournament. Now, joining me on the phone line, it's Oral Roberts center Albert Owens. Albert, welcome to the program, sir. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. What about yourself?
Good, doing pretty well. Keeping busy up here in this mid-30s weather that we've got here in Sioux, Michigan, and I'm sure it's going to be pretty similar. A couple of nice days out there in Sioux Falls, we hope, right?
Yep.
Albert, you were from Cedar Hill, Texas. What's it like back home for you?
Right now, it's probably, I'd say, real similar to Tulsa. It's not that much difference in the weather for the most part.
Sure. What's town itself like?
Kind of a mix between a small community, but in the larger part in the larger part of Dallas, just because Dallas is so close.
Do you find yourself getting out to Dallas a lot for games when you're back home, or do you kind of tend to stay in Cedar Hills area?
Well, I actually live in DeSoto, Texas.
Okay.
And which is only like 5 minutes away from Cedar Hill.
Sure.
So I usually try to just stay around the house, hang out with my mom since I don't get a chance to see her a lot, and go to the gym and work out with some of my friends from high school and everything. But for the most part, I just, usually stay to myself and just hang out with family and friends.
ORU is further south than any other team in the Summit League. What's it like when you hit the road in this league where generally you're at least a few degrees warmer than the rest of the league at any given time?
It's one of those things that it takes some getting used to. My freshman year, it was tough, especially because it was our first year back in the league for a couple of years. We had went to the Southland and everything, and so we were used to coming down to Texas and Louisiana and having, fairly warm weather for this time of year. And it's one of those things it took a little bit of getting used to.
One other thing that's taken a little getting used to at times for you, you started at the beginning of the season and then moved to the bench for a little while, and now you're back in the starting role. What's that journey been like for you this season, Albert, and what's led to some of those changes?
It's just one of those things where Coach felt like it would help us win more games, maybe be a little bit more competitive. We had been on a pretty rough losing streak, and so I just had to realize that the team is, bigger than myself, and just buy in and do whatever it takes to help the team win.
Now your efficiency. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I just said that's all I was trying to do was just help us keep getting wins.
Your efficiency rates have really stayed steady from a season ago, though. Meanwhile, your blocks have actually increased. Not just efficiency, raw totals have gone up for you. You've got a career-high 1.6 blocks per game. What kind of work have you put in to improve as a shot blocker?
It's one of those things. I've always been pretty good at blocking shots, and rebounding and shot blocking are one of the two things that kind of translate from each level of basketball you play. So if you block a lot of shots in high school, you'll probably be a pretty decent shot blocker in college. And it really just took a lot of focus, just making sure that I'm using the new rules to my advantage. So just jumping straight up in the charge circle and everything, knowing that as long as I keep my hands up, it's not going to be a foul. It really allows me to just try to block shots without worrying about the foul, as long as I know that I'm staying vertical. And we try to work on that in practice and everything so that we can have good rim protection in our zone. And I'm just glad that it's worked out.
What's that like, adjusting to a rule change like that?
Some of it can be frustrating. Some of it is relieving. It just depends kind of on what the rule is. For the most part, the hardest part this year hasn't even really been the verticality rules. It's really been post defense. They kind of have taken away our ability to arm bar like across the nation, and so that makes it a lot harder to guard in the post. And so it's one of those things where you have to, even though you might not like it, you really have to focus on it and make sure that you're doing the right thing, or else you can get called for a lot of fouls really quickly, because it's one of those things that all referees will, look for pretty much for the course of the season.
As a rebounder, you're generally in pretty terrific position, Albert. The ball just seems to find you. What do you work on to help put yourself in better position? Are you good at reading the shot right out of the hand?
I would say that the biggest thing is with Coach Mills is he always says that you won't know unless you go. And so I'd say that as a team, we just do a good job, especially with our bigs, of going to the glass no matter what, whether it's on offense or defense. I think that's what really allows us to get a lot more rebounds than most teams in our conference, is just our willingness to go. We want that to be higher than every other team in the conference.
Albert Owens, Oral Roberts Golden Eagles here on the Summit League podcast. I remember a couple of weeks ago talking with Brandon Gilbeck, the shot blocker over at Western Illinois, and he said that to him, anyway, the single most important attribute that he had as a shot blocker was timing. He felt that a sense of timing was a huge deal for him. What do you think about that as a shot blocker? What do you think your most important attribute is?
I'd say that timing is one of them. For me, I'd probably say my length. I have a 7'3" wingspan, so it really allows me to get a lot of balls that people think are out of my range. And I would agree with Brandon that timing is probably the one most important thing, because there are a lot of guys, even in the Summit that are 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", who don't block a lot of shots because their timing might be a little off. And where if you don't have the timing, you're either going to be missing a lot of shots or you're going to be fouling a lot of guys. And, I'd say probably length and timing are the two most important things when it comes to being able to block shots at a really high level.
Albert Owens, Oral Roberts Golden Eagles. I remember I watched a video interview that you did a couple of years ago where you talked about how you really enjoy playing against other big guys. You weren't a huge fan back then of playing against smaller guys that you could kind of push around. You wanted to face bigger guys and test yourself in that way. What are some of your most memorable college big man battles, and how do you think you fared in your career against those guys that were a big test?
I'd say probably the most memorable one would be against a true big, I would say would be when we played South Carolina my sophomore year, or maybe Florida International. Those were both of my sophomore years. They both had 7-footers who they were really good players. I think one of them, I believe, is playing pro overseas, and the big kid from South Carolina, he was from Lithuania, so I wouldn't be surprised if he went back and is making a fair amount of money there playing professionally. Those would probably be the two biggest battles I can remember, just because as a sophomore, I was really, trying to find my place on the team. I was starting full-time now, and, that role of low-post scoring really went on me, and low-post defense. And so those would probably be my two most vivid memories of playing against, traditional bigs who really, play with their back to the basket.
You mentioned something else in that interview that I thought was really interesting. You said playing back home with some of your buddies that you not only aren't the biggest guy on the court, you're not even sometimes one of the biggest guys on the court. What's that like playing against those guys?
It's interesting. Like I said earlier, I've been really blessed with length that most people don't have, even at 7 feet tall. And because, your wingspan is usually proportional to your body, but mine is, a +5. And so it allows me to be competitive with guys like that. And it's really a lot of fun, especially because the physical part of the game is something that a lot of people don't see, unless they've actually played basketball or been around it a lot. And so to be able to take on those type of challenges is it's always really fun, even if it's just, in a pickup game back home or something like that.
Yeah, and I think those pickup games, too, have a big impact on player development. It's not just what you're doing on the court in practice or with your team. It's getting those constant reps as you come up as a younger player, too, right?
Pickup is, especially in your younger days, I'd say pickup is really important because you don't get a chance to have trainers and all that type of stuff like they do in college and professionally year-round. So the best way to get better is just to find a gym and find people play with, especially in my opinion, this is what I always did, I always played with older people. I never really played with guys my age. And I always tried to find gyms where there would be a lot of, overseas professionals or even NBA professionals, and really challenge myself because that's really the only way you can get better is, you got to get beat a couple of times.
Yeah, and there's got to be some good guys in that Dallas area too. I mean, are there any notables that you played against that you look at and go, man, that was a guy that was really memorable playing against him in those games?
There's a few. Darren Kelly, he played at Texas probably 10 or 12 years ago, just retired a couple years ago. He's probably one of the best shooting guards I've ever played against or with. He played overseas for a number of years. a guy by the name of Herb Lamizana. He went to Rutgers and went over to China and the Philippines and made a lot of money playing professionally. A 6'10" guy, but he really had the skills of a guard. And even actually Des Bryant for the Dallas Cowboys, he would come to the gym too, and he actually wasn't that bad of a basketball player.
Okay.
I mean, he was really, really athletic.
Yeah.
And so that was interesting to see how his athleticism could translate into just about any sport.
Yeah, I'd imagine he could probably throw down a couple of dunks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He's one of those athletes that you just look at him and you go, this guy could do anything that he wanted to do. If he wanted to go to hockey, he could do that in a week. I mean, he can anything that he wants to do.
Yeah, he was really athletic and really, really strong. So that was a lot of fun as well.
Yeah, tennis, basketball, baseball, hockey, it doesn't matter. He could play all of it. Fans, the 10th annual Summit League Food Fight is now underway. You can give online at yougivegoods.com. Search for the Summit League to support your school today. League schools have raised nearly £600,000 over 9 years to support hungry families in their communities. Albert Owens on the show right now from the Oral Roberts Golden Eagles. Albert, what's this season been like for you playing under a new head coach in Paul Mills this year?
It's been interesting. It's been really different than what I'm used to. We play a zone obviously now a lot of the time, and with Coach Sutton, he was really, really in the man-to-man, just like his dad. Different plays, different offensive system, all that type of stuff. But overall, I'd say my experience has been really enjoyable. It's been a lot of fun just getting to come to practice every day with my teammates and seeing the coaches and everything. I really enjoyed myself.
One thing Coach Mills talked about in his first team meeting with you guys was how committed he was to you guys in that locker room, especially after a little bit of a turbulent offseason last year. He talked a lot about earning the trust of you guys, the players, and his passion for the game really stood out too. How do you feel that he's done with that, following through on that commitment to you guys, the players, here late in your first season under him?
Coach Mills has done a good job of never making any of us feel like we didn't belong. We truly feel like he wants all of us there, and that's been really the biggest thing. Is it's really easy for a first-year coach, especially coming from the Big 12, to just look and tell the athletic department in private that he's not going to be able to do much this year because these aren't his guys. But he's truly strived to make sure that we are as competitive as we can possibly be, and he's really believing that we can, win the Summit League tournament this weekend. And so that's been, a refreshing thing to hear, especially coming from somebody that's new, because we all knew that, Coach Sutton believed we could win no matter what and everything. But then all of a sudden when you get a new coach, it's one of those things where, like, does he like me? Does he think we can play? And so it's been nice to know that he truly believes in our team and he truly believes in everybody in our locker room.
ORU has just 3 upperclassmen, you, Austin Reuter, and redshirt junior Jontre Harris. There is a ton of length on the floor at every position that's long been an Oral Roberts staple. I think the future looks incredible for this program, too, just with the guys that are currently on that team. What do you think about the future of this program?
I think the future is really bright. Draven White's one of the best rebounders in the country, and he really, really started working very hard to improve his offensive side of the game so it can match his defensive side. He brings a lot of versatility for us in that zone because he can play the center spot in the zone. He can play the wing. In a press, he can be up top if he really, wanted to, if that's what Coach Mills wanted to do. I think that Javen's going to have a really bright future at ORU, and I'm really excited for him. I think Emmanuel as well. He's only been playing the game for 4 or 5 years, and you can see the talents there. He just is one of those guys that's going to have to get more reps in, and I think that he'll do a good job of that this summer because he works really hard. And even the kid from Dallas that's coming in next year, I didn't get a chance to meet him on his visit because I had to go back home. So we actually switched spots for a weekend. Yeah. But Kenzie Milton, I think, is going to be a really, really good player out of Dallas-Lincoln. And he's going to be somebody who is one of those guys in the zone who can fit a lot of positions as well. He might be able to play the wing. He might be able to play the guard at a high post spot in the zone. And so I'd say that the future for Oral Roberts is really, really bright.
Albert Owens, Oral Roberts Golden Eagles, looking ahead to the tournament in Sioux Falls. You played Denver in the first-round game, lost to the Pioneers twice, 73-64 at home, then 66-65 on the road. You had a couple of good games personally against that team, 6 for 7 from the floor for 17 points and hit 5 of 6 free throws in one of those contests. How did the team feel when you guys learned that this was going to be your matchup?
We're really excited to play Denver. They're a good basketball team. They're well coached. They've got, a really good guard in Joe Rausga. He's, in my opinion, probably one of the best guards in the Summit, if not the best. Daniel Amigo is a really good player at the center position. He's got a lot of, European feel to his game. He can shoot. He can post up. But honestly, we're really excited to play Denver just because we feel like we should have got them at home and on the road. We spotted them 11 points at the Mabee Center and ended up losing by 9. You just can't have bad starts like that. And then when we went to Denver, we just didn't have the best three-point shooting night. And honestly, if we had even shot, relatively average for our three-point shooting, we feel like we win that game going away. So we're really excited to play Denver, really excited for this opportunity, and we're ready to get to practice this week and just start getting prepared for them.
That's Sunday, March 4th in the late game, 8:30 p.m. start between Oral Roberts and Denver. Midco Sports Network is carrying all Summit League Tournament quarterfinal and semifinal games, plus ESPNU airs the women's title game. ESPN2 carries the men's title game. Albert Owens, Oral Roberts, when you're in Sioux Falls but not at the arena, what kind of stuff do you like to do around town?
We actually don't do much when we go on road trips, just because Coach Mills is a big believer in getting off your feet before games. So we'll get to South Dakota on Thursday probably. We'll have already practiced at the Mabee Center before we get there, and when we get there, we'll probably just get off our feet, watch some film, get something to eat, and really just hang out in the hotel room, and then go to practice the next day. Practice just about the same thing. Coach Mills has been fortunate enough to coach, a lot of guys that have gone on to the NBA, and so he kind of molds everything that we do after the best players in the world who are in the NBA, and they don't really do much before games because, they need the rest, especially since they're usually playing back-to-back-to-backs, and so we try to just do like they do and stay off our feet and get something good to eat and just relax before the game.
Fans, remember, while you're at the tournament, download the Summit League app through Google Play and the App Store. It's got everything you need to know while you're in Sioux Falls. Player profiles, matchups, ticket info, concession help, FanFest info, merchandising, everything. Get the Summit League app to help enhance your Sioux Falls experience. Albert, a couple of quick questions for you before we let you get out of here, my friend. Favorite Summit League stop around the conference?
I'd say my favorite stop is probably Denver, just because it's a nice school, and it's a really nice place to go to school. So I'd say they're probably my favorite Summit League stop. What's
your most memorable Summit League game individually?
My most memorable one would probably be my freshman year when we played USD. We went to South Dakota and we won by 1 point. And even though I didn't play the second half, I had, I think, 11 points and 5 rebounds in 15 minutes of playing time, and we ended up winning by 1 point. So that'd probably be my favorite memory, just because that was a really good game.
Who's your biggest inspiration in your basketball career?
My biggest inspiration would probably be just my high school coach, Chad Wilkerson, who graduated from ORU as well. He really changed the way I looked at basketball and what it can do for, my family and my life. So I'd say he's probably my biggest inspiration.
Which player do you think your game best compares to?
I'm a huge Zach Randolph fan, just because we're both left-handed and both, kind of more low to the ground style players. And I try to mold everything I do like his game, just because he's been able to be so effective over the last, 10 to 15 years. Just by staying within himself and not doing anything that he doesn't do.
Albert, how much do you remember your first college basketball game?
I remember it pretty vividly because I was super sick that whole week and didn't get a chance to practice. And we came out and beat Tulsa at the Mabee Center to get the Mayor's Cup for, I believe, the second or third year in a row.
Yeah, that's a nice way to debut, too, against that team. Any plans to continue playing after your college career is done? And what else do you want to do after your ORU playing career is over?
Yeah, I have really big plans to play these next few years. I want to see the world, want to make some money just playing the game that I love and trying to avoid the 9 to 5 for as long as possible, as my coaches always say. After that, I really have a heart for the community, especially young children. I want to be a coach and a teacher and eventually become a principal, just because I really feel like there aren't enough male role models in the education setting. And, I figured why not start it with myself and try to educate, young men and young women with the education, obviously, that Oral Roberts.
Albert Owens, ORU Golden Eagles, they play Sunday, March 4th in the late game at 8:30 p.m. as they face the Denver Pioneers. Albert, thanks for doing this, my friend. Good to have you on.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me.
Good luck in the tournament, too, buddy. On the way next, it's Midco Sports Network analyst Kelly Stewart and former South Dakota Coyote star. Kelly's ahead here on the Summit League podcast.
The madness returns to Sioux Falls with the 2018 Summit League Basketball Championships. See one of the nation's top college basketball tournaments March 3rd through the 6th at the Denny Sanford Premier Center. Tickets are on sale now at any Ticketmaster outlet. All session tickets starting at less than $10 per game. Support your team and find out who will punch their ticket to the big dance. Go to thesummitleague.org/tickets and claim your seats today. Brought to you by the generosity of our sponsors and the Sioux Falls Sports Authority.
The march to the summit is on. Follow exciting Summit League men's and women's basketball action as teams race towards the championship and a trip to the big dance. Go to thesummitleague.org or follow on Twitter @SummitHoops to stay up to date all season long. Now, let's get back to Matt Pocket and the Summit League podcast.
All right, welcome back in. It's episode 4 of the Summit League podcast. Good to have you all with us. Kelly Stewart on the line of Midco Sports Network and a happy alum of the USD Coyotes women's basketball team. Kelly, welcome. How are you?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well up here in Sault Ste. Marie, Sault Ste. Siberia. It's known as these days.
Man, yeah, it's cold.
I bet it's that way out there too, right? You're in Sioux Falls right now, correct?
Sioux Falls, yeah. We got dumped on with snow yesterday, and it's sunny today, but still pretty cold.
It usually kind of clears up in time for the Summit League tournament, though, if I remember.
It does, which is nice because, it's such a fun time of the year, and then everyone who visits here can maybe explore the city a little bit, go see Sioux Falls, and not turn into an icicle. So, yeah.
Yeah, I do remember that. I haven't been to Sioux Falls in many years myself, but I do remember the skies parting just in time for conference tournament play. So it's a beautiful city to get to. Remember, too, Midco Sports Network will be televising the first 3 days, all men's and women's quarterfinal and semifinal action. ESPNU airs the women's championship, and ESPN2 gets the men's title game. First off, Kelly, as an alum, not as an analyst yet, we'll get to that, but as somebody who's been in this rivalry with SDSU, how nuts was last week's game Wednesday night in Vermilion?
Oh, my gosh. It was insane. I'd have to say that is the craziest game I've ever had the opportunity to call. It was everything you would want in a rivalry game. Not only that, but everything you would want in a game that has that much on the line. I mean, looking at USD, they could be the outright conference champs and the first team to do that since Northern Illinois in '94, secure that 1 seed. And it was crazy. I remember SDSU went on their run at the beginning of the third quarter, and then there was a point that they were up 11, and they played so well with the lead. And it was like, as an alum, you want to see your school do well. You want to see them win that rivalry series. And at that point, I was like, dang, SDSU, they're looking good right now, and they play so well when they're ahead. And, man, I credit the Coyote team. They played with so much grit. You could just see it on their faces that they weren't going to lose that one, especially at home. They had great fan support behind them, and the way they fought back. As an alum, we're talking alum right now, but
yes.
I was just so proud of the girls. Oh, my alarm's going off. Just so proud of them for how they fought back and just diving on the floor. There were multiple bodies on the floor. It seemed like every single possession. People were talking about that game like, oh, man, there were so many jump balls. Well, yeah, there was a scrum after every loose ball because the players knew those 50-50 balls were going to win the game. So absolutely insane. The environment was great. It was so loud in the Sanford Coyote Sports Center, and just a thrill to watch USC cut down those nets.
Every possession matters in a game like that, especially, again, with the rivalry on the line. Now, let's check back into the vault here a minute. So, unbeknownst to me until recently, Kelly, we've actually crossed paths before. Back on December the 3rd, 2011, South Dakota traveled to Rochester, Michigan to play Oakland. The Coyotes had lost a couple days earlier, 65-63 at then IPFW, now Fort Wayne, for their first ever Summit League Conference game. Their second game was against Oakland, a 58-51 win for the Yotes, who earned their first ever Summit League victory. Turns out, I was a senior. I happened to be sitting courtside with a live microphone on 88.3 FM WXOU Auburn Hills. So I figure, because there's a window of time where we can go back into my archives, right, where I've called the action for some of these players. So I figured we'd hop into the Wayback Machine for a much younger Matt Pocket on the call and a freshman Kelly Stewart checking into the game for the first time. All right. Here it is.
88.3 FM, WXOU Auburn Hills. Welcome back courtside of the Athletic Center Arena. Matt Pocket, Garrett Elliott here. Kelly Stewart, freshman from Amory, Wisconsin, just subbed in for USD. Calhoun with it on the perimeter. Gives to Malika Glover. Haggie giving her space on the outside. Baseline drive. Defense collapses on Calhoun. Shot swatted and the rebound out to Kelly Stewart. Stewart comes down the court in a hurry. Nice spin move. Double clutch with the right hand. Couldn't score it. Haggie with the rebound. Takes it back up and rolls it home for USD. They lead 2016.
And they would go on to beat the Oakland Golden Grizzlies. So what do you remember about that game, which earned the Yotes their first ever Summit League win, now many wins later?
Well, that clip right there summarizes my entire freshman season, me making some kind of dramatic move, missing the shot, and then Amber Heggie picking up the slack for me. That was just the story of my freshman year. She always had my back. But, oh, my gosh, that seems like forever ago. I still remember traveling out to Oakland. I remember that road trip because we would fly into Indianapolis, then you have to drive 2 hours to Fort Wayne, lost by 2. So
yeah.
That was great. And then I think we drove to Rochester, and, it was our first year in the Summit League, so every place was like, oh, this is new.
Yeah.
Like, it's just kind of fun to see all the new places. But I remember the locker room was by the pool,
Yep.
which was very nice.
Yep.
And I remember the court. But other than that, I really don't remember a ton from that game. But apparently I did a spin move and missed a layup. So
Yeah, you didn't.
Not surprised.
You didn't have the best stat line in that game, though. Amber Heggie did. She scored 24. She had 14 rebounds in that game. Now, the Yotes that year, they went 23-8, 12-6 in the league, which was good for third in the conference. But the club was ineligible for postseason play at the time because of the move up to Division I. Now, fast forward all these years later, all these many wins later, now you knock off South Dakota State. How do you feel about how far that program has come from what we just heard to today?
Oh, my gosh, it's been absolutely huge. Like, I just remember coming in as a freshman and just right away learning from the seniors, like, how we do things, what the Coyote way was, and just how hardworking Annie Roach and Amber Heggie and Alexis Yackley, and just learning from all of them literally from day one. I think I showed up on June 12th to campus heading into my freshman year because we had to be out there for summer workouts. And, I mean, they were a great program at Division II. And those girls just carried that culture and brought it along right to Division I. And, we had our struggles. I think it was my sophomore year. I was hurt. We went 16-15, still over 500, but, all of a sudden, Amy Williams, boom, we're just winning. Next year we go to the tournament, and then conference champs the next 2 years and winning the WNIT in 2015-16. Last year, new coaching staff, Don Plitzweigner's staff come in, they bring in that motion offense. Usually, with the new staff, it takes about 3 years to really get things going. Look at this year, undefeated in league play, and for the first time since 1994. So it's just been the culture just carries over there, and that is so fun to watch, and it just makes me so proud because, you try and leave your impression and your mark on that program with a sense of hard work, and this is how we do things at USD, and to see that culture continue throughout the years and just keep building and building no matter who the coaching staff is. I mean, obviously they bring a big part of that into it too, but it's been so fun to watch. I mean, you just have that proud alum moment, I guess, when you watch these girls enjoying being a Coyote and having all that success.
Kelly Stewart, Midco Sports Network, right here on the Summit League podcast. Like you said, this team is really good. 24-5, 14-0 in the league, 18 league wins in a row now, and the first undefeated regular season championship in the league since 1994. Where do you think this team stacks up among the all-time Coyote great teams and the all-time great Summit League teams?
Oh, man. I mean, they are high up there. It's just so hard to gauge because teams are so different every single year. But they're phenomenal, and they play so hard. These girls are so gritty. I know I use that word a lot, but no matter what the situation, like in the SDSU game, they're down 11. They didn't care. They were going to fight back as much as they could, and it ended up working out for them. So to gauge them against all the other Coyote teams and league teams in years past, it's really hard to say just because there have been so many great teams, but they are definitely up there. They are so impressive to watch, and everyone on the team can score. They all play super hard, and then it's always fun, of course, to see the young kids stepping up as well.
And I think the biggest part of that game against South Dakota State, that 80-75 win where USD clinched the regular season championship, Ciara Duffy, who's going to be on the show this week, and Madison McKeever, both in foul trouble for much of the game, playing into the fourth quarter with 4 fouls. Kate Liveringhouse played just 8 minutes and picked up 3 fouls in that game. How does this team get it done anyway?
Well, everyone stepped up. I mean, that's kind of been the story all year is I think there's a stat like there are 9 different players that have led USD in scoring in a game this year, which is pretty much unheard of. I mean, the girls, no matter if they're freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, when they come in, they feel confident and they know they can contribute. And that's credit Daum Plitzwhite and her staff because that's something you build in practice. You hold every player accountable, whether they're a freshman or whether they're a senior, to be able to make plays and contribute to their team. And I just one of the plays that comes to mind is Allison Arns was guarding Maya Stellan, knocked the ball loose at the end of the game. Chloe Lamb dives on it, ends up drawing a foul from SDSU as the 5th team foul. So this freshman who has been playing some great minutes and has made some big plays, but was in there, because there was some foul trouble, and she's ready to contribute. So she goes to the free throw line. USC's down 1, and just easy money, sinks both of them. And just ice in the veins, but, coaches always say we want to recruit winners. Well, Chloe Lamb was a winner in high school. Her Sully Buttes program, granted a small school in South Dakota, but they won. They got it done. And so she steps up to the big stage, contributes right away. I mean, throughout the year, she's hit some huge shots for USD, but it just all goes back to how Daum Plitzwhite runs those practices and the culture there. Kids are ready to step up no matter what their age is. When they go in, they know that, hey, my teammates are counting on me and I don't want to fail them. And it's just been that way the entire year this year. We saw glimpses of it last year, but this year especially. And it's been fun to watch because everyone that comes in knows that, hey, I want to make a play.
For South Dakota State, it's Kelly Stewart right now on the Summit League podcast. For SDSU, they still have all the weapons, of course. Maddie Giebert, Macy Miller, Tegan Larson was very effective at times in that game, too, and she's had a good year, I think. Ellie Thompson, one of the best post players in the league, too. How did they line up for getting to the title game in Sioux Falls?
Well, I think we're going to see them there because, it seems to me South Dakota State, granted the last 3 out of 4 years, USD has won that regular season title, and they've gone to the tournament. But who beats them in the tournament? South Dakota State. They beat, when I was a junior and a senior, they beat us. And they are just such a great program that one of the most intangible things I think that SDSU has is no matter what happens in the regular season, obviously they want to win it, they go out to win it. They are so good at flushing that, putting it behind them, and going into the tournament with just this fiery mindset that it's a new season and here we're going to win this. And that's why they are so tough in that postseason in the Summit League tournament because mentally they are so strong, and they're so good at just turning it into a new season, having that mindset like, hey, let's start fresh, and then just taking it to teams. And, yeah, they know there's a lot of pressure on the line. You know, the Summit League being pretty much a one-bid league in all the years past, they know that we got to win or we're not going to the NCAA tournament. So I feel like, you know, it could be a USD-SDSU championship, which would be phenomenal, especially for the state. But the top two teams in the league, I feel like that's who we will see in the championship. SDSU, I'm looking at the bracket. They can see Western Illinois second round. They have swept them, granted by a lot of points twice this year. But that Western team, I feel like they could be dangerous in the tournament. But still, South Dakota State, they just have that way about them where they just know how to step up in the big moments. You have, like you mentioned, Macy Miller, Maddie Giebert, Ellie Thompson. Those are all over 1,000-point scorers all in their starting lineup, and Giebert and Miller are just juniors. And they just have that next gear that they can switch into when it comes to tournament time, playing under pressure. So that's what makes them so tough.
We'll get into the rest of the bracket in a moment here with Kelly Stewart. Remember, Midco Sports Network is televising all men's and women's quarterfinal and semifinal games at the Summit League tournament. Should USD and SDSU get to the title game, do you think that South Dakota State can get it done for the tournament spot, or do you think it's more likely for a USD three-peat over the in-state rival?
Oh, man, that's tough. That is so tough. It's hard to beat a team 3 times. We've seen it multiple times, no matter what seed each team is. But it's so hard to say in that game because it's a new season. You know, you have all this momentum in the regular season. You're rolling. All of a sudden you have to pause for 9 or 10 days, start playing the tournament where you have to play. I guess USD and SDSU get that day off on Sunday, but then you're playing Monday, you're playing Tuesday. So it really comes down to everyone's legs are tired. There's a lot on the line, and it's just who steps up that day. It can go either way. I mean, these are 2 phenomenal teams. Anyone who has watched them play knows that they're like that. They match up well. And it's one of those games just like we saw in Vermillion, same thing we saw in Frost Arena up in Brookings, that it comes down to the little plays, who can execute better, who can win the 50-50 balls, who can get those offensive rebounds and spark their team, because these teams know each other like the back of their hand. They know everything they're going to do. They know all their plays, everything. It's just a matter of who executes them better. So I can't even call it. It's just who brings their best game on that day.
Moving on, Western Illinois, a good team, but they've had their struggles this year. They've not fared well, like you said, against either of the South Dakota teams, and they would have to play SDSU, who beat them 84-48 in Brookings and 70-42 in Macomb. That would be the second round game. Only one game against a team from South Dakota has been decided by less than 20 points, but they did knock off then number 17 Stanford early in the season. They have Emily Clemens, who I think is one of the league's all-time greatest players. Do you think Western Illinois is still a contender, or because of that matchup against the Jackrabbits, they might need some help to get to the title game?
Well, they're a scary team. I mean, I'm just looking at the bracket and looking at the standings. You look at theirs, and it's like 10-4. Whoa, what happened to Western? Well, they lost to 2. Both their those losses were 2 from South Dakota and 2 from South Dakota State.
Right.
So, you know, everyone coming into this year, there was a target on their backs. They returned just about everyone, and they, after winning the regular season and the tournament championship, I mean, that's not easy to do. So there was definitely a target on their backs. They beat Stanford early in the year. That was very impressive.
Yeah.
To get smoked by South Dakota State and South Dakota, I think it surprised everyone quite a bit. But at the same time, anyone who has watched those games, I specifically remember the one at USD, Western was down big this year, and all of a sudden they just got it going. And that's how they are as a team. They can just put up points just in bunches. And that's scary if you're going into a game with them, especially in tournament time, because that's when you see those crazy things happen. Everyone knows that. Western, I know they got stomped by the South Dakota teams, but at the same time, they really know how to score. What was it? They put up like 100 and something points on Denver this year. Granted, they gave up 93, but you don't get to 114 points or whatever without making shots. They have, oh my gosh, how many alarms did I set? Make sure I woke up.
You've got alarms coming on your phone right now. Like, there were points in that game. They're just everywhere.
Oh, exactly. And you look at Clemens. You talked about Clemens. They have Taylor Higginbotham. They have Morgan Bloomer. Those are players that can really get it going. If they see one of those shots going early, they're tough. And Emily Clemens in particular, 5'4", and this girl had a triple-double last year in the tournament with rebounds, assists, and points. She is just so impressive, and she just doesn't quit. She's just got another gear. She's playing just about 40 minutes a game. She's in her senior year. Most people's legs would be falling off at this point, but she just, it doesn't faze her at all. She never looks tired. And so with that in mind, and it being her senior year and knowing how much she has to play for, Western's a dangerous team going in.
Yeah, again, I think she's one of the all-time greats in this league with what she's been able to do in her career. Kelly Stewart, Midco Sports Network, which first-round games are you most intrigued by? I think the 4-5 is an easy pick, but what else stands out?
Yeah, I'd say the 4-5 for sure, that Denver Oral Roberts game. There's nothing super standing out to me, but I do look at South Dakota Fort Wayne, and I just think back to when we played Fort Wayne, one of the first rounds. I can't remember what year it was, my junior or senior year. It was a 5-point game, and they were the bottom seed. So, there's always, you never know what team is going to catch fire, and all these lower seeds, the pressure's not on them, so they can play with that nothing-to-lose mentality. And even Omaha last year saw them upset USC in that 4-5 matchup in the first round. So if they have people get it going on their team, that could be interesting. Otherwise, not too intrigued by too many of the first-round matchups. But, if I had to pick one, it would be that 4-5 Denver Oral Roberts game.
And remember, Faith Iham had Oral Roberts triple-doubled recently, too. Do you think there's any teams outside of those top two, maybe three, that can elbow their way into the contender picture?
Oh, man, that's tough. If it was going to be a team, I think it would have to be Oral Roberts. And Faith Iham, she is playing cliche, but like a senior. She honestly has a no-quit mentality. She is going to do everything she can for her team to win, and she's just so strong, taking it to the hoop. It doesn't matter if you're playing good defense on her. She's just going to go into you and finish with the contact or draw the foul. She is playing so well right now. And then the rebounding is just it's fun to watch, honestly. They say rebounding is all about heart. Well, she has it because she is crashing the board so hard. If she doesn't get touched on a box out, she's coming down with that ball. And even if you do box her out, she might still come down with it. She is just doing everything she can for her team right now. And granted, she has to because Marti Yanez is out. And that's another thing that's a huge factor in Oral Roberts' success. When they played at USC, Misty Cousins said that Marti Yanez, there's potential for her to be back for the tournament. Now, anyone that saw her walking around with that giant knee brace is probably thinking, no, there's no chance. But, you just hope for the best for a player like that. She is just so great. And to see her go down with that knee injury with just a short time left in the NDSU game, it's just no matter what team you're on, you never want to see something like that. So just thinking about her and hoping that healing goes well because their offense runs through her and Iham, and she's just such a matchup nightmare for other teams. Marti Yanez is because she can set the screen for one of their point guards at the top, and they have some guards that are really good at coming off those ball screens, but then she can pop out and hit that three. And at 6'3", 6'4", even if you get a hand up, you're not going to block it.
Yeah.
And then on the defensive end as well, she's just that big presence in the paint that just, if she's not blocking the shot, she's altering people's shots. So she is just such a big part of that team. And it's so hard to see teams lose a player like that so late in the year because you just have that limited time to adjust to life without her. And so granted, this 9 or 10 day period between, yesterday and the start of the Summit League tournament or whenever Oral Roberts played their last game, I think it was Thursday. So they had, 8 days. But that's beneficial for them. For a lot of teams, it's like, oh, my gosh, we just want to play some games and continue our momentum. But for Oral Roberts, beneficial not only in the sense that Marti Yanez can maybe heal up, rehab up for the tournament, but at the same time to build that chemistry and have those 8 days of practice to really work a little more on playing without her because they haven't had a lot of time to adjust with that.
I think what's impressed me the most about Faith Iham, too, is that the efficiency hasn't gone down as the work rate has gone up. Normally you see all that load get shifted onto one player. their points and rebounds might go up as their field goal percentage drops. Her numbers haven't really gone down. Everything has gone up, even with all the focus on her, which is absolutely incredible. Kelly Stewart, Midco Sports Network. We'll let you get out of here in just a minute, but first player of the year for the regular season, do you got to pick?
Oh, gosh. That's tough, but
easy question, right?
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
It's a luxury in this conference that we have so many great players to choose from, but I honestly think it's going to go to Macy Miller, and because she has been instrumental in their team's success, and she just does so much for that team. But then you look at a player like Emily Clemens, and it's like, well, she was player of the year last year. She does so much as well. And then, USD, they're so balanced. They don't have anyone that, scoring like Clemens or Miller. They're close, but they have players that could be the star on any other team, but just because USD is so balanced, so they don't have that one standout star. I think you got to go with Miller or Clemens. But it's a toss-up. There are just so many great players out there that it's so hard to just pick that one player of the year. So I don't know. I just got to go with an I don't know on this one.
Kelly Stewart, you're one of a fairly small group that played in Sioux Falls Arena for the tournament and the Sanford Center. What are your memories of playing in either one of those buildings?
Oh, well, Sioux Falls Arena, I remember going to the tournament or going to the NCAA tournament because we won.
So good memories, yeah.
Yeah, good memories there. The Denny Sanford Premier Center is just top notch. It's absolutely beautiful, and just the fan draw that it brings. Summit League tournament leads the nation in attendance every year. And I'm one of those players, or I was, now I'm just a has-been, but I love playing in front of big crowds, and it doesn't matter if it's at Frost Arena and it's 99% people wearing blue and not cheering for us. It's just the atmosphere of playing in front of a big crowd in a big game is just one of the coolest things. That's something you dream about when you're a little kid. You want to go play Division I basketball, and the Summit League has that. They have that at the Sioux Falls Arena. They have that at the Denny Sanford Premier Center. Obviously, the Premier Center is just a little more shiny than the Sioux Falls Arena, but it's just a phenomenal tournament atmosphere. Of course, draws the most crowd every year. My parents are so excited to come out to this. They've been telling me every day for like the past 3 weeks that they can't wait to be out here for the Summit League tournament. But it's just such a phenomenal production, a great tournament to be at, and just fun to watch, fun to play in, and fun to call now that I'm at Midco SN.
Last question for you. The first 2 days matchup, South Dakota plays Fort Wayne at 12 o'clock on March 3rd. SDSU plays North Dakota State at 2:30. And then on the 4th, Denver versus Oral Roberts, Western Illinois versus Omaha, 12 o'clock and 2:30 starts on those games. Kelly Stewart, Midco Sports Network, which games are you working, and how can fans follow you on social media?
Well, we don't have the schedule set for which games I'm calling. I'm actually doing a rotation at the Summit League tournament. I'll be calling games, I'll be sideline reporting, and I'll also be hosting our pregame, halftime, and postgame show. Just a matter of we're kind of rotating our talent all around at Midco SM, which is really fun because we have so many great reporters to work with. So it'll be super fun. Right now, we're doing the NSIC tournament. It's the women's quarterfinals today. So that has been my main focus. With the Summit League seedings coming out yesterday officially, I'm sure my manager and scheduler will get all the schedules out to see who's doing what games, but I'll be there doing a variety of things. Fans to follow me on social media. My Midco account is at Stewart Midco SN on Twitter. Also, my personal account is at Kelly Stewart 15. And then I'm on Instagram too, at Kelly_Stewart. So yeah, I try to keep people updated with all the tournament hype and everything. So it's the best time of the year. Honestly, everyone's like, oh my gosh, you're working such long days. Like, isn't that crazy? It's like, you know what? These are long days, but I wouldn't want to be doing anything else. It's just the best time of the year as a fan, as a broadcaster, everything. So I love it.
Couldn't agree anymore. Kelly Stewart, Midco Sports Network, proud USD Coyote alum here on the Summit League podcast. Thanks for the time. We'll be watching in Sioux Falls.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, we'll have more Coyotes talk on the way. South Dakota star Ciara Duffy joins the podcast next. This is the Summit League podcast.
In its fourth decade, the Summit League continues its ascent through excellence in the classroom and success in the field of play. In cities big and small, at public and private universities, students across league institutions reach for the summit. From academic All-Americans to NCAA champions and nationally ranked teams, Summit League student athletes achieve the pinnacle of success. The Summit League, where tomorrow's leaders reach the summit today.
Get the latest news on all 19 Summit League sports at thesummitleague.org. Watch championships, access the League's ESPN3 events, view up-to-date standing statistics, and more, all at the home for Summit League athletics. Follow the League's social media pages on Twitter at The Summit League and on Facebook and Instagram at /The Summit League. Now, let's get back to Matt Pocket and the Summit League podcast.
All right, episode 4 rolls on. Now on the phone line from the University of South Dakota, Ciara Duffy, the champions, the South Dakota Coyotes. How sweet does that sound, Ciara?
Oh, my gosh. I've been waiting a long time to hear it.
Now that the season's done, though, and you've wrapped up that title, what have these last few days been like?
They've been, exciting because obviously I've never gotten to win a conference championship before, but also definitely a period of refocusing and, remembering what our ultimate goal is for sure.
Ciara, let's start with last Wednesday's game. An incredible night for the team in Vermilion, beating South Dakota State 80-75. How special was it for you to clinch the title and not just that, become the first undefeated champion in the league since '94, and to do it the way that game played out?
It was definitely really exciting, obviously. To get to play our cross-state rivals is always fun. We always get a big crowd for that, which was awesome. But I think the game itself was definitely kind of a testament to who our team has been the entire year, just gritting it out. Maybe it's not always pretty, but we, stick together, grind these games out, and that game was the definition of that.
Ciara, what I think stood out the most to me was how many Coyotes players were in foul trouble as that game entered into its later stages. You played with 4 fouls for most of the last 5 minutes after picking up 2 early ones. Madison McKeever had 4 fouls in the second half. Kate Liveringhouse was in foul trouble. How did the team stay so composed despite the foul situation?
It's always tough when you get people in foul trouble because it does just change, the way that you play. Even if you are in the game, you got to be a little bit more tentative. But I think throughout the season, we've had younger girls that have gotten to get awesome experience, and I think that this game was, an opportunity for them to prove that, and they did amazing.
How do you feel about having to go to the bench in a situation like that in a big game, being able to turn to the person next to you and go, "No, you got this"?
It's an awesome feeling. Obviously, it always stinks to have to sit on the bench, especially in such a big game. But I think, it's a testament to the incredible trust that our teammates have in each other, that it was kind of like, I'm bummed that I don't get to play, but I know that those people out there are going to do an amazing job. And right now my job is just to support them in that.
Ciara Duffy down by 11 in the third quarter, and that's when the Oats changed gears and started chipping away at that lead gradually. What happened to key that run and close the gap even when you hit that 11-point gap?
I think whenever you get down by that much, especially double digits, it's kind of dangerous because you look at it and you think, geez, we don't have a lot of time left. It's a double-digit lead, but I don't really remember one specific play or anything like that. It was kind of just taking each play as it came, chipping away slowly with every, getting a stop, getting a score. There was no big, huge, crazy thing that got us right back in it, but I think it was just a bunch of little things.
No big memorable speech like out of the movies or anything, right?
No, not quite, no.
Fans, the 10th Annual Summit League Food Fight is now underway. Remember, you can give online at yougivegoods.com. Search for the Summit League to support your school today. League schools have now raised over nearly 600,000 pounds of food over 9 years to support hungry families in their communities. Ciara, undefeated in the league. What does that particular milestone mean to you and the rest of the team?
That was definitely, I don't know about undefeated, but winning the conference was certainly a goal that we came into the season with. Going undefeated is awesome, but I think it also, adds a little something to the Summit League tournament because we know we're going to get everyone's best. Everyone's going to be gunning for us, and I think that helps us play with a little chip on our shoulder a little bit, kind of some extra motivation because we know that this is going to be, a really tough next couple days and a tough, hopefully 3 games.
Last season suffering an upset in the Summit League tournament. How much did that drive this team to excel this year?
I think that was something maybe we didn't always talk about. It was pretty kind of left a sour taste in my mouth after last year, and we didn't necessarily bring it up, but I think going into this, we definitely remember that, we had high hopes last year just like we do this year, and that ended way earlier than we wanted. And so, that's helped us to focus on taking each game as it comes and not overlooking anyone.
Yeah, not necessarily acknowledging the elephant in the room, but everybody is kind of aware that it's there, too.
Yes, absolutely.
Ciara, your sister Caitlin's on this team, too, but hasn't played much over the last couple of seasons due to injuries. How have you two helped each other grow and develop with your college careers and your individual circumstances over the last couple of seasons?
I mean, she hasn't gotten to play much in the last couple of years, but she had 2 years at Colorado State, 1 year playing here, and so she's, been through kind of all the ups and downs that college basketball brings. And even though we can't necessarily go through them together in the same way right now, she's been there. And so anytime I have, one of those ups or downs, she's always there to, be there for me, give me advice, whatever, because a lot of times she's been in that exact spot before.
Ciara, you've had a few siblings play collegiately. What were they telling you as you went through the recruiting process? What kind of advice did they have?
They definitely wanted me to make my own decisions, but that still definitely did come with some advice. I think the biggest thing that they told me was be sure that you really are choosing a school for the right reasons, forming a bond with the players and the coaches, because, that's who you're going to be spending the majority of your time with. And then also, being able to, represent my state, play in front of my family, in front of people that I know, that's been a huge thing that I don't even think I realized coming in, and has just made my experience that much better.
On the court, you had to grow up pretty quickly, too, in the college game because of all the injuries on last year's team. But was that almost a normal thing, having to be in that pressure cooker like playing family basketball back home? Or was it a big adjustment where it was really good to have your sister to, like you said, guide you through the ups and downs of it?
Yeah, it was, awesome having my sister there, especially last year. The freshman year, regardless, it's really tough. There's just so many adjustments on the court, off the court, being away from family, just a lot of things that you have to deal with. And yeah, so having her there was just, I can't even describe it. It's just been so great.
Rapid City, South Dakota originally, much closer to Mount Rushmore than Sioux Falls. What's home like for you?
Oh gosh, the Black Hills are awesome. That's something I'm very proud to be from Rapid City, from West River. But we don't get to go home maybe as much as we would like because, a lot of people don't realize that even though we're in the same state, we're actually pretty dang far away. But my family has just been awesome. And people know that, we play basketball a lot, but I think there's a lot more things that we like to do together. And they love coming to games, love coming to watch, even though it is kind of far. And any chance that we get, we like to go home, watch them play and stuff. So it is really fun being able to be in the same state.
I can kind of relate to that a little bit, being from Michigan. People don't realize it, but from the one end of the Upper Peninsula all the way down to the Ohio border, it's something like an 11-hour drive. People have no idea how big it is. Yeah. So what are some of the hot spots for you around Rapid City? What stuff do you like to do when you're back home?
Oh gosh, we love to go hiking in the hills. There's some awesome spots to go do that. There's some gorgeous lakes. Obviously going up to see Mount Rushmore, that's always fun. But yeah, doing all that kind of outdoorsy stuff is honestly something that I've missed being in Vermilion. I do love Vermilion, but there aren't as many hills or places to hike and stuff like that. So that's definitely something I love doing when I'm home.
Now, when all the Duffys converge in the Black Hills, do you still take it to the courts?
We sometimes do,
okay.
Yeah. It gets really competitive with all of us, so that was something we learned from a young age. But friendly games, of course, and free throw contests and stuff, that's something that we love to do. And also going down to the YMCA and playing the noon ball there, that's something that we love to do when we're all together.
Ciara Duffy, league champion South Dakota Coyotes. here on the Summit League podcast. Is there more at stake now in those games back home, considering that so many of your siblings have gone to the college level?
I mean, I don't know. I think that because we've gone to the college level, we're able to kind of go back and realize that, it's maybe not as important as we always thought when we were younger. I think it's definitely given us all perspective, and it's really the younger kids, I think, that really get into it a lot more than even we do. So we try to kind of give them that perspective when things don't always go well. It's just a game. It's going to be over someday. But yeah, I think the younger ones really get into it a lot more.
How beneficial do you think that is to all of you to help get to this level?
I mean, honestly, for me, it's kind of been everything. Having older siblings that have gone through this, their ability to give advice, to even just give empathy, because like I said, there's so many ups and downs of college basketball. To have older siblings there that are, telling you it's okay, telling you they've been there before, that have gone through it. Yeah, it's just been incredible. I owe everything to my older siblings.
Fans, remember, while you're at the tournament, download the Summit League app through Google Play and the App Store. It's got everything you need to know while you're in Sioux Falls. Player profiles, FanFest info, merchandising, tickets, concession help, matchups, everything you need. Get the Summit League app to help enhance your Sioux Falls experience. Speaking of the tournament in Sioux Falls, you mentioned your family likes to try to come out and see you play whenever they can. Do they have plans to make it to the tournament?
They do. They're gonna. I think I have a couple. My mom and a couple siblings are coming to the first game, and then we'll see after that. Who knows? Because the younger kids are definitely willing to miss school to come, but I don't know if my parents necessarily want them to. But yeah, as many of them as can make it definitely will.
Ciara Duffy, USD Coyotes. Fort Wayne is the first game of the tournament for you. You beat them 79-60 there in early February, 85-43 at home in mid-January. That game is noon on March 3rd. It airs on Midco Sports Network, which carries every Summit League men's and women's quarterfinal and semifinal game. And then the championship games, the women's game on ESPNU, men's game on ESPN2. What do you think about that Fort Wayne game?
I think it's definitely going to be a tough one. Coming into the Summit League tournament, everyone's playing their best right now, and especially against us, I think everyone's going to be gunning for us, and they are for sure peaking right now. I think our last game against them was certainly a testament to that. They're playing really well right now. And so, yeah, I think we're going to have to come into that one with a lot of intensity for sure.
As the number one seed, you'd get a day off on Sunday with that Saturday win against Fort Wayne. That's pretty much your regular schedule anyway, generally playing a couple of days later, but then you'd have to play 2 straight days after that to win the title. Do you like that extra day off in the middle of the tournament intensity, or do you just go, no, let's just get back in and play again?
I mean, obviously, I would love to get that next game going, but I think for everyone's bodies to have an extra day to recover is going to be huge. I mean, hopefully, God willing, if we need that extra day. But no, yeah, it is kind of catch-22 a little bit, because you kind of get into the intensity of the tournament, and then to have to sit a day, could end up being not as positive. But I think for sure to have a day to rest is going to be good.
Ciara Duffy, USD, what would you do with an off day around Sioux Falls? Does the team plan to head back to Vermilion if you guys win, or is it just hang around town, watch a bunch of games, and just have a good time for a day?
I'm not really sure for sure what we're going to be doing. I think we don't want to jinx anything by making too many extra plans. So I think taking care of that game will kind of be the first priority, and then we'll see from there.
Remember, all quarterfinal and semifinal games airing on Midco Sports Network, plus ESPNU carries the women's title game. ESPN2 has the men's title game at the Summit League tournament. What do you like to do around Sioux Falls? Do you get a chance to get there much outside of the tournament?
Actually, yeah. My sister and I have gone up there twice, because we have another sister who plays basketball at the University of Sioux Falls. So we go up there all the time to go see her. She actually had 2 games in their conference tournament these past couple days, so we'll go watch her play. But then, I mean, they have a really nice mall, and we love going shopping there, love going downtown. So, yeah, we definitely do get up to Sioux Falls quite a bit.
What's your favorite place to eat in Sioux Falls?
Oh, gosh.
Hard-hitting questions.
Yeah.
That's what we specialize in here.
I love so much food. Honestly, recently, Slim Chickens is really good.
Okay.
I would recommend it.
How about around the Summit League? What's your favorite conference restaurant to hit?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I'm trying to think of. We get a lot of good food, so it's sometimes hard to distinguish.
I can hear you kind of itemizing every place in your head. You're like, well,
I really am.
points for presentation here, but
Honestly, anywhere with good dessert. I love sweets too much, and so anywhere that has good dessert, that's my favorite.
well, okay. Well, then, what's your favorite dessert?
I don't even remember where it was, but I got a dessert pizza that was really good.
A dessert
It
pizza.
had like apples on it. Yes.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa, that's
I
different.
don't remember where it was from, but yeah, it was really good.
Ciara Duffy, South Dakota Coyotes. Let's ask some questions now about the Champs as a team. Who do you think is the funniest player on the team?
The funniest? Oh gosh. Oh, there's a couple. Honestly, okay, I'm going to name a few because I can't narrow it down. I would say
We're going to get half the team here.
Jasmine, Taylor, Kate, yeah, Megan. Honestly, everyone's really funny.
Who controls the music?
They all make me laugh.
Yeah, who controls the music and what do they keep on?
JC has very good taste in music. Honestly, a lot of different things. We list. I mean, every genre. Like, it kind of just depends. They've all introduced me to a lot more Macklemore, especially after he came to USC. I've been listening to Macklemore a lot more. Yeah.
And then, is it mostly a Pandora selection, or is this very specific with whoever's got the music? They know what they want to hear exactly.
We've got pretty specific. I mean, sometimes like during practice, we'll just play Pandora, but otherwise, yeah, we're playing specific songs. We don't leave it up to chance.
Long trips. Who picks the movies on the team? What do they pick?
A lot of times Kate will bring movies, and we all love chick flicks. We're all softies, honestly. Hopeless romantics on this team.
Who's the most serious on the team then?
Oh God,
the no nonsense one of the group.
Honestly, I don't think we have anyone that's really serious. Yeah, we don't really. Everybody's kind of funny and strange.
That's interesting
in the best way possible.
Because there's usually one in almost any team environment that's just no. That's not funny. Take care of business.
Yeah, no. I think that because people, the recruits that we bring in, they kind of have to mesh with the team, and so a huge part of that is kind of the sense of humor part. And so I honestly think, everybody is kind of usually joins in. There's no one that's ever just immediately shutting it down at all.
Part of that comes back to the bench mob. You might have the best bench mob in college basketball today.
We do. I agree. I don't think there's any contest. Our bench is amazing.
Where does that come from?
Yeah.
Where do they come up with this stuff? Because they've ruled the gift world for a while now.
Yeah, they're just honestly just really good at. They came up with these celebrations, and I think a big part of it that people don't even realize is that it's not even just putting on a show. This is just genuine emotion. These are just their genuine reactions. These girls are, they're just amazing, and they're amazing teammates, and they genuinely get that excited when something good happens. And so that I think you can tell. I think that's why everyone loves it so much.
What's better, a bench mob that's spontaneous, that just everybody happens to click on the same page, or the bench mob that's perfectly choreographed and everybody hits their role? A coin flip.
I think maybe you need a little bit of both, because I think when everyone's kind of doing a similar thing, it kind of looks cool, but also you want the reaction to be genuine. And so I think our bench, they have reactions for when every person hits a three, so they kind of know what they're doing, but then also they're just celebrating because they're genuinely excited. So I think there's kind of a mixture of both, for sure.
Ciara Duffy, South Dakota Coyotes, the Summit League regular season champions. What would it mean to you and this team, and the bench in particular, being able to compete for an NCAA tournament spot with a ton of fans there at the Sanford Center?
Oh my gosh, it was be amazing. I still remember the first time walking in there last year, and I did not realize what kind of environment I was going to be walking into. But oh my gosh, it is. One of our assistants last year when he walked in, he said, I have never seen a conference tournament like this. Like, this is amazing. And this is kind of a hidden gem, honestly. So yeah, to be able to contend for a title there in front of, our fans who've been with us this whole year, even longer than a year, honestly. I can't express it. It would be amazing.
The Coyotes play Fort Wayne in the first game of the tournament, 12 o'clock on Saturday, March 3rd. It airs on Midco Sports Network with every other Summit League men's and women's quarterfinal and semifinal game. Ciara Duffy of the champs in the regular season, the South Dakota Coyotes. Thanks for doing this. Appreciate it, and good luck.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
We'll be watching the bench mob for sure.
Okay. I hope they're good.
All right, we've got Midco Sports Network analyst Brad Newitt on the way next here on the Summit League podcast.
The madness returns to Sioux Falls with the 2018 Summit League Basketball Championships. See one of the nation's top college basketball tournaments March 3rd through the 6th at the Denny Sanford Premier Center. Tickets are on sale now at any Ticketmaster outlet. All session tickets starting at less than $10 per game. Support your team and find out who will punch their ticket to the big dance. Go to thesummitleague.org/tickets and claim your seats today. Brought to you by the generosity of our sponsors and the Sioux Falls Sports Authority.
Will your team reach the summit this season? The Summit League offers 19 sport championships, and you can get schedules, fan information, live stats, streaming, and more in one location at thesummitleague.org/championships. Need the latest updates? Follow each championship as it plays out on social media via Twitter @SummitChamps. And now, back to Matt Puckett on the Summit League podcast.
All right, welcome back into the studio. Midco Sports Network analyst Brad Newitt on the phone line. Brad will be busy in Sioux Falls. Midco Sports Network is televising all men's and women's quarterfinal and semifinal action. And remember, ESPNU will air the women's championship game, and ESPN2 has the men's title game. Brad, welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing great. It's an exciting time of the year. Really looking forward to the tournament coming up here.
I call it the most wonderful time of the year. There's nothing like it. High school, college, at every level, Division II, Division I. It's all going on right now. If you love basketball, this is Christmas.
It really is. And, this is what college basketball builds up to. I think college basketball maybe doesn't always get a lot of credit for its regular season. It's kind of long, but, boy, the postseason there is nothing else like it in any other sport.
First off, Brad, let's recap last week's thriller between South Dakota and South Dakota State. And like you said, people who overlooked the regular season, go back and watch this game. Mike Daum, David Jenkins Jr. really stood out for SDSU, as they always do. Matt Mooney is a baller. He proved it in that game. My takeaway, I thought that game showed why they're the two best teams in the league. Even though the Jacks pounced on them early, USD still had the ability to hit back and hard. I took away, again, these are the two best teams in the league. What about you? What was your lasting impression off that game?
Yeah, I've been covering the Summit League now for 8 years, and to me that might have been the highest level played regular season game I'd seen. Those two really were heavyweights going at each other, and I think you made a good point there, and USD really showed me a lot. Even though they didn't win the game, they were down big in the second half, went on an 18-2 run to get themselves back in the game, and that's in Frost Arena where, quite frankly, they've only lost 5 games in the last 5 years there, so and have currently now a 20-game home winning streak. So that's not an easy place for anyone to go in there and play. And Matt Mooney, like you said, is a baller. He really carried South Dakota on his back in the second half, had 33 points in the game, and was kind of really willing his team back into the game. But ultimately, SDSU and Mike Daum and the supporting cast he had around him, I think, ended up being a little bit too much for the Coyotes that night. But I tell you what, those teams now have split in the regular season, and certainly I think anyone who's just been a fan of the Summit League this year and has followed it is got their eyes towards Sioux Falls and hoping that, if those two teams can make it to the championship game Tuesday night at the tournament, that should just be a whale of a contest between the two of them.
Yeah, I remember watching that game, and my first thought was, wow, the Jackrabbits might come here and try to run them out of the building like what happened in Vermilion in reverse. And then Mooney starts hitting all these shots in the second half. I remember sitting there just pounding the table just how is he doing this? He's hitting impossible shot after impossible shot and brings them right back into that game. I think it can be easy to get a sense of finality somewhat with these end-of-the-season games between rivals, but there's a good chance, again, that they could play again. Did you get a sense of any nail-in-the-coffin type stuff, or were both teams going, no, we got one eye still on a potential third game?
Oh, definitely one eye on the potential third game. I think, both these coaches know that there's a pretty good chance they're going to meet up with, the ultimate prize on the line, of course, getting into the NCAA tournament. And, I talked to both of them after the game, and certainly T.J. Otzelberger, South Dakota State's head coach, felt great about the win, obviously, because it secured them the regular season Summit League title, the number 1 seed. And that's, a great feather in your cap as well. But I talked to Craig Smith, USD's coach, and, he was disappointed in the loss, but also really felt like his team did come and compete. And I don't think, as you look at the season as a whole, this wasn't the game that cost USD the title. It was some hiccups that they had along the way, losing at Denver, and most importantly, losing to North Dakota State on their home floor very early in the Summit League season. That's the one that probably ended up costing USD a chance to have a share of that Summit League title. But these two teams, they look very even to me as I've watched them play throughout the year. The game Thursday, I think, kind of proved that too, which is, again, why the excitement of them potentially matching up in Sioux Falls again would just be awesome.
As good as the Jackrabbits are, the Coyotes still rip them apart in Brookings. Now, that didn't not happen, even with everything going into this game that was played last week and the title on the line. Do you think that's something that's still relevant should these two teams play again, or is that ancient history write off?
Well, I think it's something that's probably in the back of the mind of South Dakota State. That was certainly their worst game of the year in the Summit League. I think the game kind of got away from them, and that happens sometimes in the game of basketball where, in the second half, South Dakota went on a big run on their home floor back in January and, really did bury South Dakota State. And South Dakota State just didn't have an answer that night. I think winning Thursday night obviously is huge for SDSU, having some confidence if they do match up for the third time, though.
Midco Sports Network's Brad Newitt. Midco Sports Network will be televising the first 3 days of the Summit League Championships. Last year, SDSU was an okay team. I mean, you knew they had some pieces, guys like Daum, really good at home, like you said, as they always are. The opposite away, they were 500 in the league, just kind of a middle-of-the-road team. What changed for them last year to this one becoming the dominant powerhouse?
Well, I think, last year they were a team with a new head coach that was really trying to find their way throughout the season, and it wasn't really until about the last 7 games where they really started playing good basketball and their best basketball, and they peaked at the right time, and you talk about that a lot of times with basketball teams at this time of the year, and that's what SDSU was able to do last year. They peaked at the right time and got some clutch performances from some of their role players in the Summer League tournament last year to help them get to the title. But the biggest difference from last year now to this year is they just have more scoring pieces, in my opinion, around Mike Daum. You've already mentioned a little bit one of them in the freshman that they have in David Jenkins Jr., who's really just burst on the scene for South Dakota State. Anytime you have a freshman, you don't know what to expect. But this kid, as a freshman, has really played great basketball. And if he didn't have Mike Daum maybe stealing a lot of the headlines for South Dakota State, you'd probably hear a lot more about Jenkins Jr. because he's averaging almost 18 points a game, which is crazy as a freshman to be able to do that. He can really shoot the basketball. But in addition to him, South Dakota State's gotten improved play from guys like Tevin King and Skylar Flatten. These are guys that were on the team last year that really didn't score much, but this year both those guys averaging almost double figures as well. And South Dakota State's just become an offensive monster that really no one in the Summer League's been able to shut down.
And Telling-Husen's played really well for them, too. Looking at some of the rest of the league here with Brad Newitt, it took a while for 4 and 5 to separate themselves from the rest of the pack. Fort Wayne and Denver eventually emerged in that pack and closed the year strong. But there was a big clump of teams all around each other just a couple of weeks ago. Did you expect it to play out how it did?
I'm not sure I expected that at the beginning of the year because usually you look at the Summit League race, it's usually pretty tight, at least down to the last week or two. And, boy, this year South Dakota and South Dakota State separated themselves fairly early. I mean, the last 3-4 weeks here, they've been the clear cut. In fact, I think they both clinched the 1 and 2 seeds, 3 weeks ago. And so they've kind of run away as being the top two. But then you mentioned the other 6 teams have looked fairly equal throughout most of the year, but there are 2 teams in Fort Wayne and especially Denver is a team I think that's really started to play its best basketball down the stretch here. They've won 4 games in a row, and they're a really efficient offensive team. They don't put up a lot of points, but they have really high shooting percentages. In fact, they lead the Summit League in field goal and three-point. I think they are a team that is dangerous coming into Sioux Falls that certainly could pull a potential upset over one of those top 2 teams. And, as you look at the bracket, Denver, the 3 seed, could match up with South Dakota, the 2 seed, in that semifinal. And Denver is a team that beat South Dakota this year. So that's one to watch out for if you're a Coyote fan.
The matchups, as they are finalized, the bracket just came out recently, so it is all set in stone now. South Dakota State plays Western Illinois at 6 o'clock on March the 3rd in the first game of the Summit League tournament. South Dakota versus Omaha at 8:30. And then on the 4th, Fort Wayne plays North Dakota State at 6. Denver plays Oral Roberts at 8:30. That Omaha team, I want to talk about them for a minute, Brad, because they're a really young team that graduated a ton of talent, but they made that run last year. They've got multiple state champions, multiple players of the year from high school teams. They've had their growing pains as a young team this season, but what do you think about them going forward?
Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of nice pieces, and a lot of them will be back for them next year. This is a team that always loves to play up-tempo basketball, and they've kind of been that way this year yet again, but they haven't been able to score at the level that they normally have. This is a team that typically would average, between 80 and 85 points a game. You look back to the last 2 or 3 years. This year they were down more in the mid-70s, and I think a big part of that was, Omaha defensively really struggled this year. They were the lowest team in the Summit League when it came to slowing down their opponents, and in the past, they've been a team that could really force turnovers with some defensive pressure and then turn those turnovers into fast breaks for themselves offensively. And this team this year never quite found that gear. And quite honestly, they were a team that had to battle a ton of injuries.
Yeah,
so I think a big key for them is getting back and getting healthy. I think a big guy for them is Mitch Hahn, who had to battle a shoulder injury, missed a lot of the year, did come back here towards the end, but still, as I've watched him play, I could tell not 100% healthy there. So, but they still are a team that's dangerous. No coach in the Summer League is taking them lightly when they match up with them.
Meanwhile, Bryson Scott, previous guest on the podcast over at Fort Wayne, he's a dude that you got to hit with a bus to stop him from getting to the basket. The shot that he hit to set the school scoring record, that was something out of a video game where you get up and you yell at your TV when it happens to you playing 2K. And he's got a good cast around him, too. He's got John Conchar. He's got Kason Harrell, who's been really good lately. I've been saying this for a while. I think Fort Wayne in particular is a team that nobody wants to play in the tournament. They're good enough to beat the lower seeds, certainly, and they have that guy in Scott who can wrestle games away from higher seeds with a good cast around him. What do you think about the Mastodons?
Yeah, they're right there with Denver. I mentioned Denver being a team that could pull a potential upset. I think Fort Wayne is too. They're a team that's got a ton of offensive firepower. They ended up second in the Summit League in points per game. You mentioned those 3 great scores. They love to play high possession basketball. And in a tournament format, all it takes is for your team to get hot offensively and knocking in a lot of 3-point shots, something else that Fort Wayne is very capable of. And then all of a sudden, that's what kind of fuels the upset possibilities. I think the big thing for the Mastodons is they've got to be able to play solid defense, and they've got to find a way to make sure they take care of the basketball. Those are a couple things that have hurt them at times this year. And so if they can do that, you never know. They could certainly pull a surprise in Sioux Falls as well.
Scott is that guy, though, who, again, I think he can go out there against anybody and steal a game away from you by hitting miracle shot after miracle shot. He's done it before. I think the bottom half of this bracket, too, Brad, it really struggled down the stretch, and that's kind of why you saw that Denver and Fort Wayne contingent, they rose up at the expense of some of the teams below them. Do you have any sleepers in that section?
I was looking at that this morning. I'm not sure. The one team I might point to would be North Dakota State, and the reason I say that is just because they've got some guys that have some tournament experience, and they've got a really great scorer in Paul Miller, who, again, has shown at times this year when he can really, really get it rolling, that he can carry this team offensively. You look back to their big win at South Dakota back in early part of the Summit League season, and Miller was a big reason why. I mean, really shot the ball well from the three in that game, and North Dakota State's always a team that plays pretty good defense, so that keeps the games a little closer, a little lower possession. They're a team that could do something there in that bottom four seeds. Honestly, outside of them, I think anything else I would classify as a major upset if any of those 6, 7, or 8 seeds won their first round game.
Midco Sports Network's Brad Newitt here on the Summit League podcast. Remember, Midco Sports Network will be televising all men's and women's quarterfinal and semifinal games. ESPNU will air the women's championship, and ESPN2 gets the men's title game. Brad, which team that finished in the bottom half was the biggest shock to you that finished there this year?
I actually do think North Dakota State. They ended up as the 5 seed, and they were a team that I thought had a lot more inconsistent play this year than we've typically seen out of them. They're usually a pretty steady group where you can kind of have a pretty good idea what you're going to get out of them night in, night out. And this was just one of those years where maybe all the pieces didn't quite fit together. I think a big thing that they missed was just a good inside presence on both the defense and offensive end. That's something that they've always had. In the past, last year, they graduated a guy, Dex Warner, who was just a load inside for teams to have to deal with. And I think not having that piece to their team kind of made things a little more difficult for them. But they were a team that I honestly, going into the season, would have thought maybe more in the, maybe first, second, or third possibility, but didn't quite get there this year.
Do you see anybody in this league making that deep run in the Summit League tournament and knocking off one of the South Dakota schools this year, or do you see this playing out a bit more chalk?
Yeah, I really do think the chalk is going to be the way this will go. I do think we've seen enough separation in the regular season to merit that. Now, I mean, that's still the thing, though, that makes tournament basketball the best, is you just never know what could happen. And, we've gone in years thinking that it would certainly look that way again, and there's been upsets. And even if not upsets, really close calls. I mean, for instance, last year, South Dakota came in as the 1 seed, had everything that they wanted, I mean, as far as laying in for them, and they almost lost their first game to the 8 seed Western Illinois. Western Illinois just came in and just played out of their head, played tough defense, and they had USD on the ropes. USD was able to pull the game out in the end. And, I think it's just a different vibe when you get to this point in the year. Everyone's fighting to keep their seasons alive. Certainly there's going to be pressure on South Dakota State and South Dakota because they're the expected favorites. Everyone's thinking they're going to get to the championship. And, really for either one of those teams, if they don't get there, it's going to be a big disappointment. And they certainly both have aspirations of getting to the NCAA tournament as well.
Midco Sports Network, Brad Newitt here on the Summit League podcast. Remember, the 10th Annual Summit League Food Fight is now underway. You can give online at yougivegoods.com. Search for the Summit League to support your school today. League schools have raised nearly 600,000 pounds of food over 9 years to support hungry families in their communities. And remember, too, for all your tournament info, you can go to thesummitleague.org/march to the summit. That's thesummitleague.org/march, the number 2, the summit. Brad Newitt, what are the best of the first round games to you, and which performers are you going to be watching the most in that first round of action?
Well, I do think it's always interesting just to see how the top seeds do in those first round games. I mentioned, last year South Dakota kind of having a scare, and I think sometimes that first game is sometimes the tougher one just because there's a lot of build up to it, and you got to kind of find a way to play with the pressure that you don't usually maybe feel during the regular season. So I'm always interested to see, especially in this this tournament, I think how the top 2 seeds perform and how easy those first round games are for them, or if they end up getting in a dogfight. As far as performers, I mean, you've already mentioned Matt Mooney. I mean, to me, he's a guy who's really starting to play his best basketball here at the end of his junior year that he's ever played. And that's saying a lot because he's been a terrific player in his 2 years at South Dakota. But he's a guy that, he just looks like he has the ability and the desire and just the toughness and the heart to kind of carry his team and will his team to tough victories. Yeah. He can really make some difficult shots, the ability to create his own shot. I think he's got the ability to maybe really kind of take this tournament over. And he's a guy, and really this whole South Dakota team, they've got a kind of a sour taste in their mouth after what happened to them last year. They got upset in a way. by the 4 seed South Dakota State, and just what was a great game. It came down to the last shot. South Dakota State hit one to win it. And, that's still definitely in the back of the mind of USD and Matt Mooney, and I know they want to try to correct that bad memory and certainly come out on top this year.
An interesting question here, because it's something that's been a part of this tournament forever, but the day off for the top seeds or the bottom seeds if they knock off a top seed, right? You've got 2 games played on the 3rd, 2 games played on the 4th, and then everybody left plays on the 5th, and the title game's on the 6th. How does that day off affect the teams that play on day 1 heading into day 3?
I don't know that there's a lot of impact between necessarily the first round game and then the potential second. I think where you see this come into play is if you get to the championship game, let's say, and there's a team that did have that day off playing one of the teams that didn't have a day off, that's where I think it really comes into play. Because then, 3 games in a row is tough. These teams don't do that very often. And let alone also you think about all the emotion and intensity that's going into this setting. I think that is where you could see that come into play with that extra day of rest. But it certainly is an advantage for the top 2 seeds if they can win their first game. Get a little day of rest. You get a little more prep time, too, to kind of just think about, okay, here's who we might be playing. Let's get ready for that. Even though you're not exactly sure which team it might be, it still gives you a little more breathing time, I think, in preparation as well.
Do you think the teams that have played in non-conference tournaments have an edge, having been in that environment already this season?
Oh, maybe just a little bit. The thing is, though, a lot of that happened a long time ago in the course of the basketball season. These teams, I'll tell you when they play a lot of games in a short period of time is in November and December, and especially this year with the Summit League only playing 14 league games, these teams were squeezing in anywhere between 15 and 16 non-conference games in about 7 weeks. So that's when those teams were really playing a lot of basketball. If anything, none of the teams have had to play a lot of that type of schedule here in the last 2 months. So that'll be a change for everyone.
Player of the Year, we're sitting down right now with Midco Sports Network's Brad Newitt here on the Summit League podcast. Brad, Player of the Year in the league. I'm sure Daum is the chalk pick again, but do you see anybody else with a good case to maybe upset him, maybe a Bryson Scott or a Matt Mooney?
Yeah, I think you certainly have to nod towards Daum. I mean, just what he does, scoring the basketball is just unprecedented. We haven't seen that in the Summit League in a long, long time. And, he's got 12 30-point games this year, for crying out loud. He's just, even in the games when he doesn't score a lot, like, for instance, on Thursday night against South Dakota, he only had 20 points, and got some people talking to me the next day, man, what was wrong with Daum? He only had 20. Well, the thing you don't realize is the reason maybe he only had 20 is because he had 2 guys draped on him at times or whatever, and that freed up other players. And so his impact in the game goes even beyond his scoring. And I think that's the thing that I always look back to, especially as a former coach. But, you mentioned a couple other guys I think that have strong cases, and maybe in a year when you don't have an NBA prospect in the Summit League like Mike Daum. I mean, Matt Mooney has played an MVP and a Player of the Year type of season. There's no question about it. He would be very deserving. Bryson Scott as well. His numbers are terrific. And so, in those 3 in particular, I think you've got 3 just really bona fide guys that could make a claim to be in that Player of the Year. But sometimes I think it just comes down to, who is the guy that's really kind of carried his team for the greater portion of the year. To me, that's been Mike Daum. He's been very consistent every game out for South Dakota State.
And Brad, again, we're talking about Daum only scoring 20 points. Yeah. I mean, 20 is a good night of work, and we're sitting here talking about him, well, he didn't touch the ball all that much and wasn't as effective and efficient as he usually was. Yeah, he played okay, I guess. 20 points only. That's crazy to think about.
Exactly. It really is, and that's the expectation that the fan base around Brookings has come to expect, and it's not a bad thing at all, but it also speaks to just how good a player he really is, and I think sometimes maybe especially for some of us that see him play a lot, you start to take some of that for granted. That he's going to go get maybe more than 20 every night, and when he doesn't, then you you feel like, oh man, he had an off night. And I think that's just because, we've seen him go for 30, 40, and last year had a game over 50 even.
Yeah. And he regularly puts up those numbers, too. So, again, we kind of, like you said, I think we get a little bit spoiled sometimes watching his performances. And there's a lot of guys who look at it like, man, 20 is a good night of work. And everybody else is looking at Daum like, oh, well, yeah, 20. It happened, I guess. But that's the standard that you set when you have the type of season that he's had, too. So any possible favorites that you're looking at for all tournament selections? Any guys that you look at and go, got my eye on them for possible all tournament picks? Outside of the obvious picks, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, we've talked about David Jenkins Jr. for South Dakota State as a guy who's had a terrific year as a freshman that just hasn't, maybe gotten a lot of the spotlight because of Mike Daum. And I think he's a guy that, he's had some very big games scoring the basketball as well. And when him and Daum are really scoring at a high level, that's when, SDSU looks untouchable. And it'll be interesting for me to see how the freshman handles a big atmosphere and a big stage like the Summit League tournament. That's a tough thing when you've never experienced it before.
I remember being at the tournament in Sioux Falls in the late 2000s, early 2010s, and I remember being blown away by the scale of it. It's a big-time event, big-time production, in the incredible facility now that I haven't even been to yet at the Sanford Center. I remember thinking that everybody's tournament was going to be just like this one, but the Summit League has really been one of a kind, especially with the atmosphere that you bring in for the women's games, too. How much bigger do you see this thing getting in the next several years?
Well, I'll be honest, it just amazes me every year how much more it grows and how much more interest it generates. And just, the community of Sioux Falls has just totally embraced this event. People mark it off on their calendar. Monday is maybe the most missed day of work in Sioux Falls, I would imagine.
Yeah.
It's crazy, and I'm always in awe, especially in that afternoon session Monday for the women's games, that there'll be 10,000 people there to watch. And, women's basketball in this area is terrific.
Yes.
But, nationwide, you just don't get those kind of crowds to watch women's basketball. I think, I'm going off memory here, but I want to say the women's side of the Summit League tournament, they might have been in the top 4 or 5 last year in attendance, nationwide. That's unbelievable. So it's really become a great event, like you said, on both the men and the women. But I think this year, if South Dakota and South Dakota State, which are both the 1 and 2 seats on both the men and the women, if those 4 teams all make it to Tuesday's championship, you're going to see every attendance record that the Summit League sets obliterated, because that's going to generate so much interest around here.
That's going to be pandemonium if that happens. That's going to be madness.
It is. There's no other way to describe it. It's arch rivals, and the Denny Sanford Premier Center in Sioux Falls will be half blue and half red, supporting their teams, which would be perfect, and it would probably be a dream come true for the Summit League as far as, like I said, the interest in the fans that will be there.
You're a local guy. You coach. You teach in the area. Brad, how do you find time personally for everything that's going on this time of year? You must be possibly the busiest guy in the region.
First of all, I have a terrific wife who understands that this is an important time of the year for college basketball, and is very generous in supporting our family when I'm not around much. But it is a challenge. I'll be honest with you, the sleep, the hours of sleep are minimal this time of year. But
Yep.
I'm a guy who just loves basketball. I feel blessed beyond belief that I get to broadcast these games and be a part of all of it. And it's been just amazing to see how much, Division I athletics has just exploded in this region. 10 years ago, we really didn't even have Division I athletics at all in South Dakota. So now to see all of this change and grow to what it's become, and Sioux Falls and the Summit League kind of getting, a national spotlight, especially Tuesday night in the men's championship game. That'll air on ESPN2, and, the nation tunes into that stuff. And that's really kind of a neat deal that, the state of South Dakota never had that until, 10 years ago.
Yeah, I remember my freshman year was the year that North Dakota State hit that runner in the lane to knock off Oakland, and that was the first year of the madness in Sioux Falls. And just seeing the level of chaos, that was my first real exposure to it. And Sioux Falls has just been such a tremendous host every year since then. It's been such a fantastic event. Brad Newitt, what's your schedule like for the games? What are you working and how can we watch you?
Well, I appreciate you mentioned a lot of, Midco Sports Network, which is a regional cable affiliate here in Sioux Falls. We'll be covering all the games live up to the championship game. But those games are also available on the ESPN3 platform as well. So if you're not in the Sioux Falls region, you can certainly get those digitally through that as well. As far as our assignments for games, those are still pending. Our producer will get those out to us soon, but I would say I don't care which ones I get to do. I just love the fact that I get to be involved in it, and certainly look forward to it.
Absolutely. And again, you can watch all those games on the Midco Sports Network. And again, they'll be televising the men's and women's quarterfinals and semifinals. ESPNU has the women's championship. ESPN2 has the men's title game. Remember, you can follow through the Summit League app and go to thesummitleague.org/March to the Summit for all tournament information. Midco Sports Network's Brad Newitt here on the line on the Summit League podcast. Brad, I can't wait to watch. It's here, finally.
Yeah, this is going to be great. Thanks for having me on, Matt.
Absolutely. We will be back, and when we come back, it is South Dakota State star Mike Daum here on the Summit League podcast.
In its fourth decade, the Summit League continues its ascent through excellence in the classroom and success in the field of play. In cities big and small, at public and private universities, students across league institutions reach for the Summit. From academic All-Americans to NCAA champions and nationally ranked teams, Summit League student-athletes achieve the pinnacle of success. The Summit League, where tomorrow's leaders reach the summit today.
Will your team reach the summit this season? The Summit League offers 19 sport championships, and you can get schedules, fan information, live stats, streaming, and more in one location at thesummitleague.org/championships. Need the latest updates? Follow each championship as it plays out on social media via Twitter @SummitChamps. And now, back to Matt Puckett on the Summit League podcast.
All right, welcome back. And now on the phone line, South Dakota State Jackrabbit star and Summit League regular season champion, Mike Daum. Welcome to the program, my friend. How are you?
Good, Matt. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely, my friend. Summit League Player of the Week for the 7th time this year. Lou Henson Award, National Player of the Week 2. Summit League regular season champions. What do you think about, Mike, when you hear all these titles? Almost like the king of the court being announced.
It's great for us. It's great for the school and program, but I don't think it really means too much to us players and the coaching staff. We have a lot more we want to accomplish this season, so we know we got to keep working.
Well, it ain't your first rodeo. You're waiting for the Summit League tournament to start this weekend. What are you feeling right now? I know the Go Jacks SDSU Twitter account posted this gif of you yawning for like half a minute on Monday. What are you feeling right now, man?
We feel great. We're a group of guys who have great relationships right now, and we feel like we're playing really well together. But we know that once this Summit League tournament comes around, it's like a whole new season for us, and we have to go in with even more focus and intention, and know our scout even more for these games coming up.
Mike Daum, you're from a small town in Nebraska. What's home like?
Home's fun. It is a small town, a small farming town, and my family owns a farm a little bit south of town, and I was always out there shooting hoops out on the court next to a big silo we have, and playing games with my cousins out there. It seems like every time I go home.
Growing up on a farm, I'm a city boy myself, so describe growing up on the farm to people like me who don't have any idea what that's like.
Okay, so I actually lived in town, but my farm was like outside of town, so I was out there a lot. So it was pretty similar to growing up on it. But it was a lot of hard work when I was younger. It was early mornings, waking up and going out with Dad, and really not wanting to do anything, but kind of him getting on your butt and forcing you to do some jobs you didn't want to do. I think it kind of built character for me right away.
What kind of stuff did he have you doing?
I mean, it was things from sweeping the barns out to helping clean blades on tractors, or even just washing machinery and stuff like that.
What kind of stuff did you guys have going on at that farm? Was it an animal farm? Were you guys growing crops?
Mainly crops. When
Okay.
I was super young, we used to have some cattle on it, so I would go and watch my dad feed the cattle too a lot. We had a big feedlot going when I was younger, and then we kind of got rid of that as I got older, and we kind of turned more into just a grain farm. So I gotta help a lot with like wheat harvest and corn harvest, things like that.
One thing that I've heard about you, when you guys get off the bus for shoot around, when you guys pull into town somewhere, you know, everybody's kind of just horsing around, just getting some shots up or whatever. You put on your headphones and you go through a full workout. Is that kind of where that came from, growing up on that farm, Mike?
I definitely think it is. You know, for me, every time I get the opportunity to step on the court, it's a blessing, and I can't take those things for granted. So, you know, every time we go into a workout, or even if it's just a light shoot around the night before, for me, I know I have great focus and great intentions with what I need to get done, and I go out and do it.
Yeah, the shoot-arounds after you've been on a bus for a bunch of hours or whatever, I mean, that's usually just, all right, stretch the legs a little bit. And I hear that you're just like, no, here we go, getting up 200 shots.
Yep, nope. I definitely I have intentions. I have goals every time I step on the court. So for me to get those shots in is key for my team to keep playing well.
Mike Daum, South Dakota State, adjusting to life in a bit of a bigger town. You started playing for Scott Nagy, who was at SDSU for years. He leaves the program, and TJ Otzelberger comes in. What's that change been like over the last few years from when you got to campus versus now, while adjusting to life in a bit of a bigger town?
Yeah, when I first got here, it was, it definitely was different coming from such a small farm town. You know, some of my teammates come from, you know, a big city, and they get here and they're like, dang, this is weird. And for me, I was like, wow, we have a Walmart, and we have McDonald's, and we have a Subway and Dairy Queen and things like that. But
all this stuff,
yeah, exactly. It was a smooth transition for me. You know, being able to come in under a great coaching staff with Coach Nagy and Coach Cooley, my recruiting coach, and then it was just another smooth transition when Coach Otz came in, just because of his ability to build relationships with everyone here, and us players especially when he first got here.
You and Otz have a pretty cool relationship, and I hear you've even taken on some play calling roles on the floor, right? How did that come about?
You know, it seems like over the 1 year that he's been here for 4 or 5 years, it feels like to me. And I think that what he did such a great job of right away with me especially is just building a relationship off the basketball court first. And I think that we had such a strong bond and connection, and we see things the same way, that it led to us on the court playing so well for each other. And, you know, he's always on me out there, and he's like, you know, I'm not in the play. He's like, I'm not playing it. And I know you guys see things differently than I do. So he's like, you have the freedom to call plays. And if you guys see something that you want to take advantage of, then do it.
Is that something that makes you think about a potential career in coaching yourself way down the line after your playing days are done, whenever that is?
Yeah, good Lord willing, that'd be a ways away. But no, it definitely does. You know, coaching and helping other people has always been something that I've enjoyed doing. And, you know, everything that I've been through, experiences since I was younger to where I am today now, is something that I would love to share and be able to help people, you know, reach their goals in the future.
Fans, remember the Summit League recently rolled out a brand new app for its basketball championships. It's got everything you need to know about the tournament. So if you're going, this is the app. It will help you with info about the happenings surrounding the event, like FanFest, merchandise, concession information, and ticket updates. It's available now through Google Play or the App Store. Mike Daum, SDSU Jackrabbits. Teammates, I hear you and Reed Tellinghusen are pretty much attached at the hip. Tell me a bit about Reed and how you guys got so close.
Yeah, Reed is definitely one of my best friends. Ever since I got to campus here, the first day we met, you could just kind of tell we were both two goofy dudes, super sarcastic, and I think that just kind of clicked with our relationship building so strong and so fast. And it seems like, I mean, ever since I got here, we've done everything together. We go places together. We eat together. We just hang out together. And I think that how well we've built our relationship off the court's led to us playing so well on the court together. And, I mean, he's become, like I said, one of my best friends and someone that I'll be in touch with for the rest of my life.
Yeah, do you think him being from a small town, too, helped you guys connect? Was he another farm boy?
It definitely did. I don't think he was as much of a farm boy as I was, but I'm always on him about being from a country town too. So I know that over the years, all the teammates have made fun of me and him for just being a two couple of hick boys from farm town. So we always get a kick out of that.
What kind of stuff do you guys do outside of basketball? I mean, do you guys go to country music shows or anything? Is it kind of that level, or do you guys just hang out and I guess do the city stuff?
I mean, we kind of just hang out. I mean, one thing we do together all the time is we're big video game players.
Okay.
So we'll hop on and we'll play video games together and we'll just laugh and talk on that. But I mean, we do everything together. I mean, outside the basketball court and shooting, whether we go in, at late at night or early in the morning, we'll just grab something to eat, whether it's say what's up, and we're always trying to figure out when we're going to hang out or do something.
Mike Daum, South Dakota State. All right, what do you guys play?
We play Fortnite.
Okay.
It's like this go-to game. If you've ever heard of the Hunger Games, then it's kind of like that. You get dropped into this map, and then you just have to survive and be the last one living.
Okay. Who wins?
Well, most of the time we usually play on the same team together.
Okay.
So, yeah.
What else do you guys do? You guys play 2K at all? Do you guys stay away from the sports games even? You'd rather just get it done on the court?
No, yeah, we play 2K in real life for us, so we stay away from those sports games. No, yeah, we definitely we do that on the court for us, so that's good enough.
Mike, give me a good story with you and Reed. Your pick.
Oh man, this is tough.
There's going to be a lot here. Yeah.
I gotta think about this one because we've had some pretty fun times together.
Yeah. Something on the road. Let's go with something on the road here. Some road trip story with you and Reed.
Okay. So I remember this one. This one was pretty good. So my freshman year, we were on the road. Actually, it was our overseas trip. And we were in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And I remember the first time we got out on a Copacabana beach. And we were both just laughing and giggling and stuff because we saw all these pretty girls walking around us. And we walked up to one of the guys, and I don't think he spoke English at all. And I just remember me and Reed walked up to him, and we said, "Hey, how do you say a girl is beautiful in Portuguese or whatever, in Spanish?" And we're trying to sit there, figure it out, and it was like muy bonita or muy caliente. I don't remember what it was, but I remember we just laughed because that entire trip we were running around just screaming that out, and that was one of the funniest stories from when we were super young, when we first kind of got to know each other.
A couple of freshmen being freshmen, right?
Exactly.
Mike Daum and Reed telling yous and on the road. That must be a sight to behold.
We're always doing something funny. I like. It's so hard to try to get something specific because things just happen, and how me and Reed react to it, I think, is what's funniest. Is it's just on the spot stuff.
Mike Daum, Summit League regular season champion, South Dakota State Jackrabbits, here on the Summit League podcast. Hey, fans, remember the 10th annual Summit League food fight is now underway. You can give online at yougivegoods.com. Search for the Summit League to support your school today. League schools have raised nearly 600,000 pounds of food over 9 years to support hungry families in their communities. Mike, moving on to the basketball court, champions. How did it feel getting it done for the league title against USD last week?
It was a crazy feeling. That's our first outright conference regular season title, and that's huge for us. That's something that we talked about at the start of the year that, Coach has never been a part of, I've never been a part of, and none of these guys have. And for us to, lock in all regular season long and get it done like that means a lot to us and means a lot to this program.
You guys have won 16 of your last 17 games now. The Jacks almost never lose at Frost Arena. They've got one of the best home winning percentages in the country since the Nate Walters era at .937 entering this year since 2011 and 12. It's a huge advantage for not just the men's team, but the women's team too. What do you think makes Frost such a terrible place for other teams to come play and such a great place for you guys?
I would say it's two things. It's our fan atmosphere that we have inside the building, and it's the weather that goes on outside of the building. I think people come visit us, and the frigid cold gets to their heads a little bit, so they're already kind of shaking in their boots. So then once we get inside Frost Arena, it's really just an electric feel, and our fans do a great job of showing out each night. And, we're working on getting more and more students to each game, and we love it when they get there and are rowdy and loud too. And I think it just makes it a special place because we know that it's our home court, and we want to protect it, and we don't want to lose on it. So we kind of go in with a strong mindset each game at home.
That's interesting, Mike, bringing up the weather, because I remember hearing from a couple of guys years ago that were up in Fargo to play North Dakota State, and they were just like, man, this weather is insane. I hate this kind of thing. When can we go home? Is that something that you picked up on talking to some of the other guys from these other teams, or is that just you thinking, no, this is – nobody likes this cold, so we're just used to it?
I really haven't talked to many of the other players. I know that, everyone hates the cold, but it's all about a mindset thing. We read a book at the start of the summer about this Marine, and he said, this Marine goes in his mind, he goes, it's always sunny and 80 degrees in my mind. And I've kind of embodied that, and I think our team's kind of embodied that. No matter where we are, you're not going to stop us from doing what we do. And in our minds, we're always in a good mood. We're always upbeat. It's always sunny and 80 degrees, and no matter what's going on, we're gonna be able to take over.
I need to start thinking that way myself, because it's sunny and a little bit less than half that in Sioux, Michigan right now.
I feel you.
Yeah, I could definitely use some 80 degrees myself. You guys have Western Illinois coming up on Saturday at 6 p.m. in the first game of the Summit League men's basketball tournament. Brandon Gilbeck, their big shot blocker, good dude. What have your battles with him been like?
He is a good dude, and it seems like he's been in the Summit League since I've been here for a long time, and he's just a solid post player, and he's so good at reading offensive plays and being able to put himself in a position to block shots like that. And it's always been fun to go against another big guy in the Summit League with as big as he is and as physical as he is. And I think our battles have been pretty good over the years.
What do you think about that game as a team matchup?
It's going to be a tough game. Every time you get into the Summit League, it's a whole new mindset for each team. And, for them, they're going to be going out super loose and aggressive and nothing to lose, and I think that's how we need to go out the same way. And I think we match up well with them. They got a couple tough guards that match up with that they play very well, and I think we do too. So it'll just be a game of knowing the scout, knowing what we need to do, and controlling what we can control.
Midco Sports Network will televise every quarterfinal and semifinal game of the Summit League tournament, men's and women's. The women's title game airs on ESPNU, the men's title game on ESPN2, both on Tuesday the 6th. Mike Daum, South Dakota State. If you guys win on Saturday, you get Sunday off. Do you plan to stay in Sioux Falls, or do you head back to Brookings?
I think we plan to stay down there. That's going to be clutch for us to be able to take that day off and rest our legs like that before two more tough games. So good Lord willing, if we can get that first one down, then we'll be enjoying that day off.
Yeah, and with that day off, that's essentially your regular schedule anyway. Normally you play Thursday, then Saturday. Now it's just Saturday and then Monday if you guys win.
Yep.
That's got to be really nice to keep on your normal clock.
Yeah, no, it really is, and it's fun for us too because we kind of get that day to interact with our families, and I think it kind of keeps our mind off the Summit League tournament and all the hype that's going on around us, and it's another way to keep our minds off of things. And then when we come back on Monday and Tuesday, we'll be relaxed and focused and ready to go.
Mike, what do you like to do in Sioux Falls in your downtime?
Hang out with my family for sure. You know, my family's great about coming, and I know like Reed has his brother that lives there, so I'm always enjoying hanging out with them, and it's a lot of fun for us to kind of go out and interact with the people of Sioux Falls too. I know it's at the Summer League tournament, we get to go out and we'll take pictures with the tons of fans, or if we run to the mall, we're always running into people that are saying what's up. So it's kind of fun for us to kind of give back and say what's up to all the Jackrabbit fans in Sioux Falls.
What's it like playing at the Sanford Center? Because that building is incredible, and especially with all those Jackrabbit fans right there.
It's truly amazing. You know, that's one experience that I wish everyone got to experience, is how much support that we get from Jackrabbit Nation all across, and everyone who drives up to make the Summit League happen, and everyone who works to make the Summit League possible. The Denny Sanford Premier Center is the best venue I've ever played at, and it's great facilities. How they treat us at the Summit League is fantastic, and really the experience all around is one of a kind.
South Dakota State's Mike Daum here on the Summit League podcast. Hey, man, it's been fun. How can we keep tabs on you on social media?
It's all about Twitter. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Dominator24. So I usually tweet something funny here or there. I'm usually making some sort of sarcastic remark to one of my teammates about his tweets. So,
like, and retweeting big yawns from GoJacks SDSU, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Mike Daum, take care of yourself, my friend. We'll see you on the big stage this weekend. You guys play Western Illinois in the first game.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it, Matt. Thank you.
Absolutely. We'll be back to wrap the show and send us into the tournament. Next, it's the Summit League podcast.
The madness returns to Sioux Falls with the 2018 Summit League Basketball Championships. See one of the nation's top college basketball tournaments March 3rd through the 6th at the Denny Sanford Premier Center. Tickets are on sale now at any Ticketmaster outlet. All session tickets starting at less than $10 per game. Support your team and find out who will punch their ticket to the big dance. Go to thesummitleague.org/tickets and claim your seats today. Brought to you by the generosity of our sponsors and the Sioux Falls Sports Authority.
Get the latest news on all 19 Summit League sports at thesummitleague.org. Watch championships, access the League's ESPN3 events, view up-to-date standing statistics, and more, all at the home for Summit League athletics. Follow the League's social media pages on Twitter at The Summit League and on Facebook and Instagram at /The Summit League. Now, let's get back to Matt Pocket and the Summit League podcast.
Wow, the mega episode is in the books, episode 4 leading into the Summit League tournament. We talked with a couple of the champions, Mike Daum and Ciara Duffy, Oral Roberts center Albert Owens here on the show too, and then Kelly Stewart and Brad Newitt of Midco Sports Network joining us here on the podcast. So you've got everything you need to know now. You got to download the app too. You got to get that. You got to donate to the Summit Food Fight too, the 10th annual Summit Food Fight. Again, you can go to yougivegoods.com, search the Summit League, and donate to your school today to help feed hungry families in our communities. March Madness descending upon Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Boy, this is what it's all been building to. The regular season championships have been decided, and now we head into Summit League postseason play, or as I call it, the most wonderful time of the year. Here we go. It's all this weekend in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Episode 5 coming up in 2 weeks' time. We'll talk with Summit League Commissioner Tom Duple and a couple of our postseason champions as well to wrap up our first season of the Summit League podcast. That's all I got to say. Enjoy the madness in Sioux Falls. We'll see you in a couple of weeks when we know how this all shakes out this weekend for the Summit League tournament.
Join us every 2 weeks for a new episode of the Summit League podcast at thesummitleague.org. Follow the league all season long on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Summit League. And follow Matt on Twitter and Facebook at CornerPocket422.